Hello and welcome to The Rescue, the final episode of this first Dalek story. We're joined by two of the actors in it, William Russell and Carole Ford, and joining us for the very first time is director Richard Martin. Richard, why was this story split between two directors, and how did that work for you?
I've just been asked that, and the truth is that Chris could have done a wonderful job on the whole thing, but he was dying to get off and do another serial which he'd already set up, and it was a period piece as far as I can remember, set in Devon or Cornwall, and so he could only really spare this amount of time. Also, it was considered that I was far from a safe pair of hands. I was wild and woolly and all over the place, and somebody more sagacious and able to hold this young man straight off the course into some sort of control would be a good idea. So I think that it worked very well because he's such a lovely man and was very generous to me, and I was able to throw in my ideas, and we were able to work together, in fact. So that was how it happened. A bit of hap chance, which turned into a good collaboration.
Were you actually present for each other's recordings? Did you go in and watch when Chris was doing it? Did he come in and watch when you were doing it?
I certainly watched some of Chris's recordings, but by that time already the pressure was on to start the planning, so that one found that one was working full time, and I don't think I watched them all the way through all the time. I certainly just watching little bits of his stuff afresh today. I was amazed that I had let so much slip. I probably could have been there and liaised with him more tightly, but as I said, I was wild and woolly, had my own ideas, and was rushing to try and implement them.
Now, bearing in mind this is obviously the last episode, and you directed them, you directed a couple of the early ones as well, but that sequence we just saw, where Andidus cut the rope and dropped to his death, was actually the very first thing that was filmed for this serial, done at Ealing. Did you do that? Did you go in just to do those little film inserts? Or?
Yes, I did, yeah. I loved working at Ealing, of course. It was great fun. And you could get it more right. You hadn't got the limit of these 10-foot flats, which were always a bane of my life. I was watching how cleverly Chris had managed to avoid that and to black it out where he needed to drop his camera on the floor or drop his actors down on the floor. The moment you get a camera on the floor, you get exciting shots, you get that sort of dynamic worm's eye view, which this desperately needed. And if you've got a standing actor in front of it, you've shot off a 10-foot flat. At Ealing, you could say, I'll have a 20-foot flat. Oh, sure, we've got plenty of those, they'd say. Slip a bit of paint on that, and you were freer, and you're freer on camera angles, and you get it more right. Very seductive.
Bill and Carole, putting aside the personalities of your wonderful directors on this story, was it difficult for you as actors to actually, when you're kind of halfway through a story, to suddenly change director mid-run, and if you've got used to the way Chris did the first couple or something, suddenly a new director comes in? Is that an unnerving thing in the middle of an actual story?
I thought you were very unnerved by me.
I do remember him being wild and woolly. I do remember that. Oh, he's this wild and woolly young man. But I don't remember it caused any difficulties, do you?
No,
Seemed to go
I
very
don't think
smoothly.
so. I don't think it did at all. In fact, it may well have added a little impetus to one's attention span. No, I don't think it made much difference, quite honestly.
The people I annoyed most, I think, were
Technical,
yes, pushing them.
Yeah.
But I, because I was an actor, I had sort of hope I speak actors' language, and so I could slip in.
You were kind to us.
Quite gently there.
Is that quite an important thing as a director to be able to? I mean, obviously you've got to communicate with the technician then, but coming from an acting background, does that make it a lot easier for you to deal with actors?
To me, that was my trump card. I was very excited photographically and directorially, but I know, or I feel I knew, how actors worked. So I was able to talk to them. I've watched some directors, very good directors, absolutely sweat. I'm sure you have in front of actors, and say, "Do it better." You know, one very bright young director who I was attempting to teach down at the film school recently said, "Oh, that's their problem." I say, "Walk 20 feet, they do it. How they do it, what they think inside their head, that's their problem."
Oh,
well, I can't
for him.
take that attitude, and I think that's very destructive, actually. And I told him so. I thought he was a prat, and we got on well thereafter.
Yeah.
Is he directing now?
God knows what's happened to him.
Now, I've asked everyone else this question, so I have to ask you, what was your first opinion when you saw the Daleks, and did you think, how on earth are we going to get those to work in the studio? Were you really fired up and excited about doing something like that?
You're enormously fired up and excited because I was a sci-fi enthusiast. And indeed, War of the Worlds is still one of the great stories of all time to me. My problem was that it was so difficult to realise them. All our problems were that it was so difficult to realise them after H.G. Wells' description of the Martian invasion and these incredible animals that he didn't have to turn around and make for television. So he had the problem, but also the excitement of creating a high technopod in which a mutated mind was attempting to operate. That was a good idea. I think that was Terry Nation's best. I think it was Terry Nation's idea. It was his best idea.
Now, while you would have been making this serial, and particularly by the point we've got to this last episode, Doctor Who, because of this story, had become big. It had become news. Daleks were suddenly very successful and popular. Were you aware of this at the time, or is that something for you that only seeps in later?
We were aware of it when Bill came in with his Evening Standard. You remember that? And opened it, and it was a wonderful cartoon by Lowe. This was the time when General de Gaulle was saying, "No, we can't join the common market," and all that. And there was this wonderful cartoon of General de Gaulle saying no, and he was a Dalek. And Bill opened it. I remember Bill opened it on the table in the rehearsal room and said, "That's it."
Arrived.
But he wasn't saying exterminate. Amazing.
That's it. Yes.
Did you ever feel, though, that you were kind of almost overshadowed a bit by the Daleks, or were you happy with that? Was that something you thought, well, we're all here, we're supporting the Daleks, they're supporting us, or was there a slight little feeling that
I
they
thought
were
they got much too much dialogue.
Oh, you've got to have your nasties, haven't you? I mean,
Yes.
Carole, jumping ahead slightly, at what point did you decide that you didn't want to stick with Doctor Who? How soon did that come to you?
About halfway through, I think. I just felt my part wasn't really going anywhere. She wasn't. She was always. It seemed to me that the people who were coming in, our visitors, were always getting much more interesting things to do than I was, and it seemed that I was simply there as a bridge to allow the plot to progress, and that there wasn't really any character to Susan herself.
A screamer.
A screamer or an ankle twister, Yeah. I mean, I would delightedly jump on the new script, any new script that came to me, thinking, "Oh, good, I'm going to be given something different and meaningful to doing this." But it was almost always the same sort of thing.
she didn't have any sex life, did she?
No, I know, outrageous, really. But, basically, we would arrive, I would go off and get into trouble, the others would come and look for me and rescue me, and occasionally even I might sort of help to rescue one of them, but it didn't really change too much. I was just wanting to get out there and get my teeth into something. The trouble is, I was being offered wonderful work while I was in this. It always happens with an actor. While you're doing something, you get offered work. And afterwards, I was so stereotyped as this character. It was terribly difficult for me. I didn't do any film or television for a long time because I was only being offered this sort of part. So I went off and did loads and loads and loads of theatre, which was fantastic.
Was your disappointment with what happened with Susan as a result of the fact that did they perhaps oversell it to you at the
Yes.
beginning? In what way? What did they tell you it was going to be like?
Well, I might be contradicted in this, but in my memory of it is that she was going to be physically very superior. She was going to do all sorts of things rather in the Avengers style, which I would have been able to do because I was a trained dancer, I was a trained acrobat. I could have done anything they threw at me. She was also going to be supremely intelligent, extraordinarily intelligent. She was going to have telepathic communication, not just with her grandfather, but with aliens. And she was going to have a wonderful wardrobe designed for her. And none of those things happened. Except in the Sensorites, I had a bit of telepathic communication. So it was slightly disappointing. Added to which, all my strangeness was taken away from me. That was the last straw.
There was an interesting point earlier on today. We were looking at the pilot episode where you did the thing with the raw sash,
Yes.
which was then dropped for the actual finished episode. Is that the sort of thing that appealed to you and disappointed you when it was gone?
Yes, I mean, not so much that. I mean, I would like her to have had much more spirit. I would like her to have confronted. I mean, let's face it. Presumably, she and her grandfather had been zapping around for many, many years, a great deal of time anyway, and met all sorts of aliens and been confronted with all sorts of situations. And so, therefore, she was used to it. They were used to it. And they would have done a bit more than just scream and run away. I would have liked much more trying to communicate with the aliens. And anyway, I mustn't moon. I enjoyed what I did. I did enjoy doing it tremendously, mainly because of this lot, you know, my mates in it. But I was very disappointed with the scripts on the whole, for me.
What about you, Bill? Because you start off very much, particularly I think in this story, is very much the man of action. You do a lot of physical stuff in this. Did you feel that petered out for you as the series went on? Whereas here at the beginning, it's all very powerful.
No,
or were you happy with it?
No, I didn't notice that. I mean, I inevitably when the leading actor is elderly, you're in a story, an adventure story. You realise you're going to be doing quite a lot of the action, and no, I didn't honestly find that. Now, my reason for leaving when I did leave was simply because I'm like that. I mean, I wanted to go back to the theatre. I was going to do a play with Jackie, and there were things, other things I wanted to do, and I had enjoyed it very much. But that was the real reason for it.
Richard, I wanted to ask you about Doctor Who generally, because you did quite a few of them in those early years, and you clearly love them, and you clearly enjoy looking at them these days. What is it about Doctor Who, other than necessarily your sort of sci-fi bent anyway, what is it about Doctor Who that appeals to you? Why do you think this series was so successful?
Oh, well, I think there are possibly two different reasons. It was successful because it was unique. And I enjoyed doing it, and I enjoyed the challenge because I wanted it to be even better than it was. It's not irrelevant that Carole felt discontented with her character and its development. I always felt that there should be a story which keeps rolling on, and the development within the stories. And I was looking always for that, and I was always slightly angry because it was shifted from writer to writer to writer, and I kept sort of saying, why haven't we asked Asimov,
No, wow.
Yeah. Why aren't we pushing this further? And they said, no, it's very good for what it is. So I was enormously excited by its visual potential, but very frustrated by its emotional and human aspect, which seemed very stultified, except in the characters, as Carole says, which came in, which were able to have more development than our anchormen, as it were, and women who had to remain more or less static. I don't think they did have to remain more or less static, but the fact that they did annoyed me intensely. And so I had many a fight with script editors and things to try and get things better. But by the time a director is given the script, he's expected actually to almost sort of just put cameras on it and go, not to say, well, is this set on the right planet? I mean, that's not the sort of input they like, and that, I'm afraid, was the sort of input they got from me.
But does that, therefore, is that what appealed to you about the programme, that you could? I mean, I was saying earlier to Verity and Warris that Doctor Who at the time was a very young programme. Most of the people working on it behind the scenes were young people, which was quite unusual for television at the time. Most of them were sort of people that had been there for 20-odd years and were all in their sort of 40s and 50s that were producing it. And apart from Sidney Newman, with Verity being young and all the directors being young, do you think that brought something to the programme?
Oh, I think so. I think television is, in fact, especially this sort of live television, is a young man's medium. You work electronically. You are attempting to catch up with electrons, and that's fast. And if you can do that, if you can even get halfway there, it's enormously stimulating to get this number of shots on the screen, to get to I like to work with 5 cameras, or normally we were assigned 4. And so I always said, where's my 5th camera? And they would sigh darkly and say, well, where are you going to put it? And I'd say, there. And they say, no, you can't. And they say, yes, I can. And they, well, get a mirror and bloody well put it there. So all that was enormously exciting for me. So I was pushing at the boundaries, and that's what I liked. I loved working with these. I mean, I wasn't, no young director could be more graced with 4 different and super actors to work with.
That's nice.
It was really a very enjoyable experience, and they were always so supportive and never critical of me pushing all around them. And that's really that was my buzz.
We're sort of here celebrating the beginnings of Doctor Who. When you look at something like this, can you see why it lasted for so long? Or do you look at it and go, why did it last so long? I mean, does it have that mysterious something that made it last? Is it something you can see in this?
I think it does, because it has a bit of space. It has what I was talking about earlier, but it has space in which the characters can develop, and also the audience can participate in imaginatively. Because a lot of this, in a sense, you can say, looking at it today, from the 21st century back 45 years, you can say, oh, it's ridiculous, why were they, when my youngest son looks at it, he roars with laughter. But, it gave us then something that we hadn't seen on television. And I think that's what it was. It was the imagination. We involved the imagination of the viewer. And we had time and space to do that. And I think that was the important quality. Do you think that's difficult today?
Well, the stories were good, weren't they?
And the stories were good. The stories were very good.
People wanted to know what happened next. I mean, I'm sitting here in front of this screen, and I'm having to really concentrate to not just involve myself in it. I'm getting lost in it again.
Yes.
And this is something which happened a long time ago, and I was involved in, and yet I'm looking at it as if it's a story that I'm looking at as a viewer. It is fascinating. It is totally fascinating, I think.
There ain't nothing, well, except for the new Doctor Who, there ain't nothing like it.
No,
There ain't nothing like it. It
been.
hasn't been replaced with something else. I know that there were others, weren't there?
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
It's not the
American,
same.
I'm thinking Blake 7. What was it? Yeah.
Yes, there was some that was.
But this had. I think you're absolutely right. Russ is right that this involved people's imaginations, mine, and everybody else's, and therefore produced that reciprocity of creativity, which you hope in the theatre, for example, to happen magically between across the footlights, don't you? When an audience has really participated in theatre.
Yes, it's what you're striving for.
Yes,
It is
yes.
It is a shared experience.
It has a sort of
then,
magic
and then
about it,
really
doesn't it?
And
works.
perhaps just because you can't always cut to 1,000 crumbling icebergs,
Yeah.
you've got to have this limitation of people saying, look at those crumbling icebergs.
Yes.
That actually is a trigger for people's imagination. And I have to say that we all participate in subduing, even putting to sleep people's imaginations by doing it bigger and better than they ever could. So you end up with the couch potato. You end up with the person saying, "Hit me, give me some popcorn and a hit me."
Yes.
Whereas this probably does excite and go both ways.
This challenges people as well, isn't it? It's what we were saying in the previous episode about engaging people and making them think about things like that. And there doesn't seem to be a great deal of that on TV these days, where people are actually forced to sit down and say, here are two sides of an argument.
That's right.
And watch it develop, watch the resolution develop. Whereas nowadays people just seem to tell you what you have to think.
That's right.
Yes, that's quite true, actually. And there were many, that was one. There were many surprises, unexpected things happening in it all the time. So you couldn't just sit back and think, well, yeah, I know how this is going to develop, because you never did. It was always something different.
I don't think I'll ever forget it.
We've gone.
You've gone. You've left the dead planet behind.
Yes.
How tricky was it, on a very basic level, Richard, to do something like that dematerialisation shot in a studio with the technology that you had back in those days?
Well, that was not difficult. It was just a static object, a static object, static camera. You put it there, you take it away. That's simple. What was, of course, incredibly difficult was the travelling mat, which if you tried it with colour separation overlay, you had this awful line round it. Well, that was in the colour days, but in the black and white days, it wasn't easy. You had to get the luminosity right. In fact, I avoided it like the plague, because I knew that it would take me the entire time in the
you
studio.
had.
Yeah. So you had to go for things that actually worked as they would work maybe in theatre. A couple of technicians lying on their back, working them, kicking them up and down, flashing the lights, pumping up the column, whatever it is.
But you didn't have light control, did you, in Studio D?
Oh, Studio D, but I wasn't in Studio. Studio D was a nightmare.
Yeah.
It was just totally inadequate for this programme.
Yeah.
Right, on that note, I want to bring to an end our look at the beginnings of Doctor Who, and so thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you.
It's good to go back.